Alex Kurtzman has some interesting updates regarding the Star Trek franchise. Quentin Tarantino has an update on his possible R-rated Star Trek film. Chris Hemsworth explains what really stopped his involvement in Star Trek 4. Plus, I'm going to tell you where to get the limited special edition of the Deep Space Nine documentary, What We Left Behind, and where you can enter to win a new, free 10th anniversary Blu-ray box set of the Kelvin Timeline trilogy. This is the Star Trek Universe Podcast.
All that right after this. Welcome to the Star Trek Universe Podcast. My name is Matthew Carroll.
I'm David C. Robertson.
What's up, Dave? How you doing, buddy?
I am okay, though I have, I've been slipping a bit, man.
What it was slipping in what way?
I've gotten quite hung up on, collecting Star Trek novels.
Oh, yeah? Are you reading them?
I have just started reading this one of the old Bantam books. This one of the first Star Trek novels called Spock Messiah.
Nice.
And yeah, it's pretty interesting. But yeah, I've always kind of in the back of my mind, I've always had like a lot of Star Trek books, or at least for several years I have. Mm-hmm. And I kind of put it on the back burner. But now I'm sort of going, I can get a lot of these at thrift stores for really cheap.
Yeah, man, for sure. I know you got a big stash from Jason Smith. Sent you a big box. That was awesome.
That's right. And
he sent me a big box of Marvel stuff. It's really rad.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, he sent me comics, which I'm gonna get to that. I'm gonna start.
Oh yeah, I thought there was this bunch of novels in there too.
No, not really.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But, I have a bunch of novels, and I have a bunch of stuff that I've been wanting to, like, finish out, like, collections and stuff of storylines. So, yeah, it's just a slippery slope, and, as I do, I embrace the multiverse, so,
they can all exist in your mind and be fine.
Absolutely. And they do, and, I don't know. It's probably not a good idea for me to do that. Speaking
of the multiverse, we've been getting a lot of feedback over on the MCU cast about the multiverse, some various multiverse theories, and there's actually some really interesting connections between, I'll just say it because seems like the cast to talk about multiple verses, even if it's not Star Trek. Someone sent us some feedback talking about, apparently there is a universe mentioned in the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie.
Okay.
That has been destroyed by incursions. Okay. Like the incursions being caused or whatever, by the separations of the timelines or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that is the timeline that is mentioned in the Spider-Man trailer that Mysterio has come from. Which I just thought was a really cool, even if it's just a little Easter egg, it's really interesting that he is coming over from a universe saying incursions have caused the destruction of his planet. And in Spider-Verse, they mentioned that world being destroyed by incursions.
Well, that's fantastic.
Isn't that fantastic? Oh, man. I love it.
I do too.
I love it a lot. It's probably just a small Easter egg, but man, I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, someone on Instagram made a really, really nice looking picture of of three different sort of Doctor Strange portals with Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, and Tom Holland Spider-Man all standing together.
Oh, that's awesome.
And oh my God. Oh,
I would be so down.
Me too.
Of all the Fox properties that they those are Sony. Of all the non-Marvel Studios properties that if you brought them into the universe, I wouldn't be upset. The Spider-Man's ones would be it. I really don't want them to bring the X-Men universe, and I really don't want them to bring any of the Fantastic Four versions into the MCU. But if they made, even as part of the multiverse, they made those other Spider-Men a thing, I would be so down.
Well, Okay, so I think I would be more down, or equally down. I think I would be equally down if they did Fantastic Four, because Reed Richards in the comics, he literally has a huge wall of monitors where he talks to himself in various universes.
That's awesome.
That sounds like awesome.
Oh no,
Awesome
I want them to bring the Fantastic Four in. One of my favorite theories we've come up with on the MCU cast is that it's definitely not true. It's absolutely not true, but I love the idea, is that the Spider-Man Far From Home movie will end with the Fantastic Four showing up to retrieve Mysterio because he's like running around on another universe. He's like a villain from their world, and they're coming over to like pick him up or something.
Oh yeah, I would love that.
I would love it so much.
I'm just saying, I would also I would be fine with Fox's X-Men, however many universes you think that is, because I know I think at least 3 or 4.
Yeah, it's at least 3 or 4. Not to mention in the Deadpool movies, the Cable stuff probably creates a few more. And if you talk about the last Deadpool movie, Deadpool's time travel probably creates so many. Yeah, it's a lot of universes.
Though I'll say this, my personal theory is that everything after X-Men 2 is pretty much just one of those comic books that Wolverine complains about in Logan as having been like a warped perception of what really happened.
Oh, right. Yeah. Or I loved that nod in Logan. Okay. We are the Star Trek Universe podcast. We're going to jump away from Marvel. I'm just having a blast. I just hadn't talked to you about all this stuff in a while. me and Dave haven't seen each other or had a podcast because he changed jobs. And so you're working days, I'm working nights now, basically. And we just don't get to do this as much. And, you get us on the cast sitting here talking. We're going to talk about everything. So, hopefully that's not too annoying, but we love Marvel too. And we love DC and we love all these things. So, but let's get into the Star Trek stuff, right?
Absolutely. There was a, Deadline Hollywood has a crew call podcast. And they were talking to Alex Kurtzman, and he just spilled the beans on a bunch of stuff. And it's not even really spilling the beans. It's just giving a good idea of where he's at. And I kind of cut out the fluff from what I could tell. And I think this is all really cool. So if you remember, the CBS TV Studios president, David Staff, said that they wanted to have something on all the time as far as Star Trek goes.
Yeah.
All year. And Kurtzman talked a little bit about that. He says it takes really a year from writing to finished product. It's sort of like animation because you have to factor in about 7 months of CG work and then 4 months of prep, especially if you're building sets for a new show. It's not like they're all going to be on the air at one time. If David wants a show on Always, I have to plan 2 or 3 years out from now. The goal is not to have them on top of each other, nor is it to rush anything out when it's not ready. That's I like that response, and I like how he's just sort of that's not going to happen. I'm sorry. Well,
he didn't say it's not going to happen. And the other guy, in his defense, said it's a goal. Yeah. And I mean,
it's a goal.
I almost called it destiny. Okay, so another jumping away from Star Trek for a second. I feel a little, speaking of Destiny, speaking of video games, just saying how I got there. I have been obsessed, and I feel a little ashamed because Star Trek is my universe, but I've been playing sort of a Star Wars themed game. And
it's all good.
Obsessively. Have you heard of Beat Saber?
No. Actually, yes, you told me about that.
Okay, I'm trying to lose weight. And I have been. We both have been. A little substantial. Between us, we've lost at least 2 human beings.
That's right.
There's
not counting my firstborn.
Oh, gosh.
I'm kidding. I don't have kids. Not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore. Son of a bitch. Fruit Ninja, where you slice the fruit. It's like Fruit Ninja combined with you're using lightsabers in a VR environment, except and it's a music game. So it's like DDR, Dance Dance Revolution, Star Wars, lightsabers, and Fruit Ninja all combined into one big dancing game where you're playing with lightsabers, and it is so much fun. And I've been using it as my cardio instead of going on walks.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in my house and I'll play for like 3 hours. Okay. Anyway, you should come over and try it. It's really amazing.
I might. I've enjoyed Star Wars games or Star Wars-esque games from time to time.
And it's not a Star Wars game, but it's called Beat Saber. And you're holding a lightsaber. It's definitely Star Wars themed a little bit.
They know what they're doing.
Oh, they know what they're doing. Although I really would love if the game had a mode where you're holding just regular swords. Like it's all electronic, but I would love it if you just like had actual swords for a level. That'd be fun. Anyway, so that's my word to the Beat Saber people. Get better music on the game and give me a level where you have holding real swords. Wow,
that was quite a tangent.
But anyway, I think that what Kurtzman said doesn't really conflict, and I'm definitely in agreement with you that it's good that they take their time.
Yeah, I'm really just glad that he's not like, kowtowing to what the production or to what the president wants, basically.
Yes, absolutely. And if you get Discovery and Picard on, that's half the year. You're halfway there, and they've already had in production the Lower Deck series. If you get those three on, you've got 75% of the year covered. Not to mention Short Treks, which will cover a few more weeks. Like they're getting there, like it's not like they're far off. I mean, unless some of the rumors of Discovery's cancellation are true, which at this point they're not.
No.
It seems like it's going well. So, I mean, obviously they've got another season. They're going to get another season, but we don't know what after that, you never know.
Like 2 days ago, this Midnight's Edge YouTube channel that's always saying Discovery's about to be canceled or it is canceled or secretly canceled, whatever. Picard is in trouble. They released a video that said, Alex Kurtzman has been fired and Picard is almost canceled. No, none of that is happening. Yeah. None of that is happening.
They're making a good show in Discovery. It had a rough start, and it definitely has its haters, but it's a good show. They've got Picard, which is like the most exciting thing that Star Trek fans have had in probably 20 years. Like, it's very exciting.
Yeah, and yes, there are times when I've looked at Discovery and said, it's not quite what I'm looking for with Star Trek, they were kind of tone deaf, or they did this wrong. But you know what? You could just go take Code of Honor from TNG and shove it up your ass. Because pretty much almost the entirety of season 1 is pretty tone deaf of TNG. And that's like the most beloved series.
Right.
It just pisses me off, man.
I know. People just like to hate. And honestly, the cancellation of the 4th, Kelvin Timeline movie is probably to me the most, it bodes the best for all these TV shows because I think Star Trek is starting to pick a lane. Like, sure, we've got some news we're going to talk about this Tarantino film. They may do some films. They may do some films that are in universe. They may do some films where they're just using the properties I'm wondering if this Tarantino will be in universe, because it might be so differently toned.
Yeah, who knows? We don't know. Like, I don't understand. Like, me personally, I'm like, okay, you don't have Pine, you don't have Hemsworth. Why are we not doing Captain Sulu in Kelvinverse? I would totally watch that movie. I like John Cho.
And I love John Cho, and I feel like he's a big enough name to carry it.
I do too.
I like John Cho a lot. Give us a Sulu movie. Give us Sulu on the Excelsior or whatever.
Yeah. And he is canonically gay, so the movie's gonna be woke.
Yeah. Just do it. Just put it out in Pride Month and you're there, man. You pulled off a real Taylor Swift co-oping of a movement.
That's right.
What's our next news story, my friend?
All right, so I included this next bit. I don't really care terribly about this, but you do.
Ooh.
And you've often talked about how you're worried that we're not introducing Star Trek to younger audiences. And Kurtzman talked about growing the fan base. He says, when I went to CBS, I said, I think you have a universe here that is very underutilized and a fan base that I think is hungry for a lot more. And I walked them through the plan of what I saw for the next 5 to 10 years of Star Trek. Part of it was kind of premised on the idea that it was going to take time. What I said was, don't expect us to put the first thing out and suddenly, you'll have 100 million new fans. That's not going to happen. Trek has been around for too long for that to happen. But what we do have is new generations. And what I can tell you is that Trek in general finds people when they're about between 9 and 12. It's never reached younger than that, which it has, but whatever. He says it's never tried to, and to me, that's a hugely missed opportunity, especially because what you're really trying to do is influence hearts and minds with really positive messages. Messages about who we can be as a species and as people and what our future is. So why not start young? And not for a cynical reason. Not because, hey, let's sell more toys, but because if you really want Star Trek to reach people, then you've got to start young. And this is where I guess the Star Wars influence on me really mattered, because as a kid at 4 years old, I could imagine myself starting up with the twin sons of Tatooine and wondering what my life was. Star Trek didn't give me that same thing. It gave me Wesley Crusher. It gave me different characters, but again, those are older characters. But we are definitely seeing just metric proof that the fan base is growing, and it's growing younger, and yet we're keeping our current fans, and that's great. So I think there's more that he says later on here, where he's talking about targeting kids with the Nickelodeon show, even Lower Decks, and a couple of animated shorts from that they're doing for the short treks. I think they are definitely pushing towards
younger fans,
grabbing those younger fans, man.
I like that. But as I've said, I liked that. I'm totally on board. But he also mentioned there the influence of Star Wars. And I think there's another piece of Star Wars that's influencing him there. And that is things like the Clone Wars TV shows and which has actually apparently developed into a pretty good thing. But also they have books now of the original trilogy. Because those movies are old and kids won't watch them, they have they literally have children's picture books of the original trilogy in cartoon form that are being told by C-3PO and droids, and it's like the droids' perspective on the first on Star Wars 4, 5, and 6, and so they tell the story, so the kids get the story from a slightly different perspective and from a narrator that, whatever, has a different perspective. So, but just to lead them into the story. But to me, that's a different thing than what Star Trek's always done. I don't mind that it's always been the 9 to 12 target market. And I know that obviously you grew up younger liking Star Trek and there's obviously the cartoon, which was definitely, worked for younger people. But I do think that he's mostly accurate in that the 9 to 12 is when people get the age where they're like, I'm starting to understand these storylines that they're going for. What I like about Star Trek so much is that a child and a parent can sit down together and both enjoy it. So while I like that he's trying to bring new fans in, that is important to the growth of the franchise and the persisting of the franchise. I don't love the idea of just being we're going to make some for kids so that later they'll like the adult stuff. Cause I don't know that that's a good model. We haven't really seen that. Star Wars is doing the same thing, and I don't know that that's a model that works. I feel I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. I'm not really upset by it. I just wish there was a Star Trek that was for all ages in the way that TNG was, in the way that the original series was. They have their, flashy cowboy original series stuff, the bright colors, the cowboy diplomacy, but then parents can watch it for the moral quandaries, I miss, there's very little TV these days that a family can sit down and watch together. And I think that Star Trek has always been a show that, at least that's how I liked it, is my dad liked it. So he put it on the TV. We had one TV. That's the other problem, is everyone's watching their own thing on their own device these days. But, anyway, So it's a slightly different thing than I want them to do. I would like, because I don't think Picard is going to work for kids either. And I think
we don't know.
I just can't imagine old man with Bendai syndrome or whatever, like dealing with the grief of losing a civilization. Like, I just can't imagine that's going to be like, for kids.
I don't know, man. I would have watched that as a kid. It's so
probably
hard for me to
too.
tell because we were such different kinds of kids.
Right. I was hanging out with my friends Kelly and Nick. They have a kid, and his name's Connor. He was over at my house because Kelly's been doing some work for me in the office, and
sure.
Connor was out in the den because he's out of school, and he's just here to hang out. And we gave him Netflix, and he's like, "Yeah, watch whatever." And I was like expecting him to watch some kids shows. He's a little older, like he's 12 or whatever. I came in and he was watching like Love It or List It, like HGTV. Mm-hmm. Love It or List It. And I was like, I don't understand. If I was 13, there's no way I'd be watching Love It or List It. I don't understand this at all. And like, I watched like the other day, he was in there with his sister and they were watching like a cooking show, like just a real basic cook. I was like, what is the world? Like, I don't understand.
Little hipsters.
Right? Like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Why reality? Yeah. Why that kind of reality? I get like reality TV can be silly and exciting and over the top, but like, why the boring reality TV that I find boring? I find it boring and soothing. It's like Sunday afternoon TV when you need to shut your brain off. It's not, I don't know. It was weird. Kids are weird.
Oh yeah. But hey, I when I was a kid, I was enthralled by Star Trek and all sorts of strange things. And, I'm one of those guys though where I'm like 6'3" and I'm a pretty big guy, but a lot of guys who like are looking up at me, things like, oh, you're into sports and you're into, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, nope. I like Big Brother and I like to watch Star Trek. And I don't know what I would do with a football if one happened upon me.
Yeah. I'm right there with you, my friend.
But I do think that they are giving it a shot. And, as far as pushing towards the younger kids, and I think that, there is, like, he does talk about, Lower Decks being for all ages.
That's cool.
And, so I'm excited about that. Now, you were talking about the Star Wars books for kids that are retelling the stories. I'm really excited because I just purchased a couple of little golden books that they're doing for Star Trek. And one is called I Am Captain Kirk and one is called I Am Spock. And they are kind of drawn in a cartoony fashion. I got them for my nephew Elijah. He's turning 5, and I'll be going down there Saturday to see him and presenting him with those. And I'm really super excited about it. But the artwork was so fantastic. I mean, let's face it, I would have anyway, but the artwork was so fantastic, I had to buy myself a copy as well.
Of course.
And I have the next in the line, which is, I believe, an adaptation of The Trouble with Tribbles.
Nice.
In
That's
a
a good
golden
one.
book fashion.
It's a great one for kids.
I think it's, I don't know. I think they're trying something here, and I think Star Trek is at a critical juncture where they have to appeal to adult people and not be afraid to, throw some language out and be a little, risky, but they also need to be like cultivating the new people, and they have to get kidsy. So I think like if they don't do those things, they are going to die as a franchise.
See, that's where I mean, like, I hear you, and obviously it's close to what I've been saying for a long time. So I'm not completely disagreeing with the idea of that, but I will push back on the fact that they need to do this exactly. Like, they just need to make Star Trek that younger people can find that isn't so brutal that it's like, not for kids. Like, there's a way they could be making Star Trek. They could be making what they're making now. Just like, the Marvel model, those movies all work for everybody. Discovery could be their Marvel Netflix series where it's really dark and really not for kids. That could be Discovery, and then they could be making Star Trek shows that can work for everybody, like all of the other Marvel things, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, I understand why they wouldn't go right to a TNG retread, which is what all of these people complaining about Discovery really want. They just want TNG again. It's what that's why they complained about Deep Space Nine. That's why they complained about Voyager. They just want TNG. They weren't even fans of the original series, most of them. Like, these TNG people. Like, I love TNG, but oh my god. I understand it was like the most popular Star Trek that ever happened, but Star Trek can be different things.
Right.
It can be.
I'm totally with you. You know, I don't mind what they're doing. My only pointing out is that what they're doing with Discovery is not a thing kids can find.
Right. And I got a little sidetracked.
I'm happy that they're bringing in things that kids can find. It's just, I wish they were making things that could be found by everybody. I don't know.
And I think they are.
I hope
we just haven't seen those things yet.
Yeah, agreed. I hope
Plus they've, got 40 years of that material as well.
Sure.
It's like on everybody's computer or television now.
Right.
I'm old.
The problem is a lot of the stuff is older to the point that it's starting to no longer be relevant to children today. You know what I mean? And
I understand that there are pacing problems and that kids are, have attention problems.
Right. I mean, there is Star Trek that's too slow for me. Not too slow for me. I still can sit and enjoy it, but I will get a little too bored at times with certain Star Trek that I'm not driven to like watch the entire series sometimes, because I'll watch a couple episodes and be like, that was fun, but it's not a good binge watch for me, which is what I need it to be.
Yeah. It's always such a strange, like, I understand it's a thing, but it's always been so strange to me because it's just, I just take whatever is being presented and go like, oh, this is how it was done. And I've never had that problem where it's just like, oh, the pacing is so slow. How can I get through it? It's just, I don't know. I'm so happy with slower pacing as well. Like, it doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah. Well, it's not just slower pacing. It's other things. So slower pacing is one of the things.
Or bad special effects or whatever you want to call it.
Sure. All of that. Also some pretty atrocious acting at times. There's good times too, but there's some pretty bad times. And then one of the biggest problems with Star Trek, is at this point, the formula that they did from TNG through Voyager and to some degree the original series, although they were kind of building the formula, is so tried and true especially by the end of Voyager that it becomes incredibly predictable.
I will agree with that.
And it's not even necessarily that some of those early TNG episodes, what they're doing is innovative for the time. But it's like when I went to see the Lord of the Rings movies, I did not know that story. I think I'd read The Hobbit when I was younger. I'd never read the Lord of the Rings. I watched Lord of the Rings, but as it happened, there are these moments in there that are supposed to feel like a surprise, and I'm sure in the original book, it felt like, oh, that's a big surprise. But to me, they felt like tropes, even though I'd never read them. And it's because they were innovative and they did such a cool thing that everyone after J.R.R. Tolkien kind of created things based on things that he did. And so suddenly his thing seems trite, even though it's not. It was the innovator, but it's still like going backwards and reading. I mean, it's like going back and reading like whatever, way further back, Odysseus or whatever. Like, you're like, oh, I kind of know what's going to happen. I'm not super entertained by this story. I'm interested in what they're doing. I'm not entertained by it because I have so many more years of storytelling and the advancement of the form. And so looking back at some older Star Trek, I think that's where some of the problem comes from. Not just slower pacing. Slower pacing is not really the problem.
Yeah.
For me.
I can see that.
But at times, slower pacing is, also not amazing. It's a combination of all those things.
I don't know. I just have problems.
Well, you also have a great affection for all of it.
I do.
Which is awesome. You grew up on it in a way that even I did not. I grew up a little more, on the peripheries, especially the original series. I grew up more on TNG and DS9 than anything. And so a lot of that stuff that you have great affection for, because it's like your childhood, I don't have that.
Well, it's also certain, because I didn't really have much of a childhood situation with stuff like Citizen Kane, for instance. But, Bethany my wife, Bethany will say, oh, I don't like Citizen Kane. I don't like it. It's really boring and it's slowly paced. And I'm sitting there going, look at all these things that Orson Welles was doing for the first time. This is amazing. And my youngest sister, Brittany, is the same way as I am. There's stuff, we didn't have this stuff in our childhood. She's sitting around watching Bing Crosby and shit. I don't know, I never got her into that. I don't know how she got there.
Right.
But she's just enthralled by that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's wrong. I think it's something wrong with us. It's like we've got The Shining. But for slow old stuff.
Right.
By the way, that Dr. Sleep trailer. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, that looked good. And I know that you're much, again, a bigger Stephen King fan than I, and so I know that's exciting for you.
I mean, I can't believe he even talked Stephen King into letting them, or giving them his blessing over doing a sequel to the Kubrick film, because King did not like the Kubrick film.
Oh, I didn't know that it even was a sequel to the Kubrick film.
Yeah, Kubrick changed a whole bunch of stuff from the book.
I knew that.
King never liked it.
I knew that King never liked it. I didn't know that this new one was. I was wondering about that. I wasn't sure if it was a adaptation of the book, or if it was a direct sequel to the movie. That's neat.
It is both. It is an adaptation of Dr. Sleep, but they have changed. And King went out of his way to make sure that Dr. Sleep was a sequel to his Shining. So when they came in, they talked to King about it and had a pitch, and he was like, well, shit, okay. And they they adapted it into a sequel to Kubrick's The Shining, and they actually used some of Kubrick's footage, apparently in this thing. So,
oh wow, that's neat.
They recreated some of it, and they also have some of it in there. So I'm really interested in that.
That's very cool.
Anyway, back to Star Trek. I'm so sorry.
That's okay, man. If people really mind the tangents, that sucks. I'm sorry, but it's part of what we do, and it's going to be a little more prevalent today because we haven't done a cast in a while.
I know.
Not even having done a cast, hadn't talked in a while.
I know. I'm sorry about that too.
There've been no microphones in front of us. Why should we?
Isn't that's totally true. It's got to that point for me where I'm just like, my friend Brandon called me yesterday, and I kind of just wanted to be like, you want to come to a podcast? Because otherwise, the time's are ticking away.
Oh yeah, it drives me nuts. I want to make music for a living. I do podcasts for fun. It really is just for fun. I really enjoy it. It's a motivation to build, it's a commitment device to make me talk to my friends about things I love. That's really what it is. And have the conversations that I missed having, from when I was a kid. But the idea of these days trying to become in any way famous for something.
Yeah.
You basically have to be creating all the time because everyone wants to be a part of your life now. The way that people get any kind of notoriety these days is constantly posting on social media and creating videos and content and blogs and podcasts. And it's terrible to me. I don't have the impulse to constantly create stuff to put online, but I know, to get my music out there, that's one of the things I need to be doing is making more content for my YouTube and my Facebook and my Instagram. And it's just not in me. It's not my impulse. And now I'm like, man, I don't know. It's frustrating because there was a time when you just made good music. You sought out gatekeepers, tried to convince them that you could put on a show and if they liked the music enough, they gave you a shot and then you tried your best, you know? These days it's like, the gatekeepers wait for you to build a online following, and then they come behind you and go, "We see you've struck a nerve with a certain portion of the population. Now we'll put some money behind you." So you kind of have to build it yourself and then get picked up. And so trying to make a music thing work is so hard. By the way, everybody, go listen to "Left to Burn" by Matthew Carroll on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Music.
I stand by it. It's a good album.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate that. So Star Trek.
Yeah, man. So Kurtzman was talking about Star Trek Picard. And he did say that while the show is called Picard, he stressed that the idea of a family, of a ship's crew, is still at the heart of the show. He says it's something that has been baked into the DNA of Picard. Obviously, it's Patrick's show. We have an unbelievable cast, though. And you know, the thing that I loved about the Next Gen cast is that you could have focused any episode on any of them. I would say the same thing about our cast now. That is such an incredibly brilliant group of actors, that are given such amazing things to do. Without spoiling anything, I think you will feel that. And he says, I think we've found a story that honors everything that people love about the character, but in ways that you're not going to expect, and yet you're going to feel more familiar as the show goes on. A lot has happened to Jean-Luc in the intervening years. There's been a lot going on. He's had to deal with some new things. He's had to deal with some old things, and both of those things kind of come colliding together. He's made choices that he's not necessarily feeling great about, and yet I think the audience will understand exactly why he made them. I don't get quite the same feeling I get about this show that I do Discovery. Like, even when they were talking about Discovery up front, they were saying like they were wanting to push the envelope. They were wanting to do things they can only do on a streaming service. And the more I hear from these guys, the more I feel like Picard is really going to be tonally more in line with Next Generation, even if it is darker.
Interesting. I like how he addresses the fact that I'm not really looking for the show to be more like Next Gen, but I like how he says that the idea of having a crew and living his life that way is sort of built into Picard's DNA now. It's just who he is and how he works. I like that a lot. Yeah,
I do too. I like the idea of someone the audience looks up to as a stalwart beacon of morality, like Captain Picard, having done something that he's not proud of and having to find, having to find redemption.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
I'm always a sucker for those kinds of stories.
Yeah, anyway. Me too. Are you watching Jessica Jones yet? Oh yeah, no, you said we talked about this, and you haven't even watched season 2 yet.
Yeah, I'm real far behind on all the Netflix shows. I completely lost the will to watch them when they all started getting canceled. I was just like, okay.
Yeah, they got canceled, but almost all of them have had a good ending. And I think this one they found out soon enough that was happening that I'm pretty sure this one will end well. That being said, this season of Jessica Jones, I've only watched 3 episodes so far, and it is really cool, and all the stuff they're doing with morality and kind of how they're breaking it up among characters, and characters all having kind of half of a good desires and bad desires, and good inclinations and bad inclinations, and how it's all kind of causing sort of just chaos. I really love it. I've really loved this season so far. It's been really cool.
Bethany's already watched all of it, and I kind of caught a few glimpses here and there. And I was intrigued and kind of like, oh, well, why are they fighting? And she's like, do you want me to tell you? I'm like, no. All right. And by the way, she is patiently awaiting your reviews on MCU Cast.
Yeah, I want to get them out. I want to get them out as quick as we can. Jeff has been very busy. He just got back from New York. We both did. And he's his family life is keeping him real busy with trying to get organized. I'm hoping we can record 2 more tonight, but we'll see. Well, it's so many podcasts to do before Spider-Man comes out. Like, we've got like 15 episode casts to do between Jessica Jones and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. before Spider-Man comes out in 2 weeks.
I was so excited to I didn't realize Spider-Man was coming out that soon, and then I heard about it and I was like, oh!
Yeah, I'm really excited about Spider-Man.
And I'm even probably going to try to go see this whatever it is, this Endgame with an extra deleted scene or so and some other surprises they're saying that's coming back into theaters.
Yeah, me too. I'm all in. I'm sure we'll do a cast about it over on the MCU cast.
I keep seeing people on Twitter like, oh, they're just doing this so they can beat Avatar. And I was just like, I'll do it. I don't care. That doesn't bother me at all. Yes, please.
Yeah, I was like, that's exactly what they're doing, and I love it. They're giving me more in-game and giving me an excuse to go see it that I feel good about because I get more content. I'm 100% on board.
Absolutely. Like, yeah, it'll be a matinee show for me, but I'm going to do it. Anyway, Kurtzman says this is like the most directionless episode of this show we've ever done.
It is for sure the most directionless episode. What else does Kurtzman say?
Kurtzman says that they are on episode 5 of season 3 of Discovery.
Cool.
So that's cool. Short treks, he says that they are going to be doing more, 2 of which are cartoons. And there's going to be 4 live action shorts. He says we're doing 6 more of them. 2 of them are animated. The 2 that we're doing that are animated are unlike our other 2 animated shows. What I love about the short treks is that to me they are an experimental training ground and a place to experiment with different things. Directors who we've never worked with before. Tones we've never tried before. Michael Giacchino, that's the composer, is directing one of the animated shorts, and Olatunde Osunsanmi is doing another one in the animated shorts, and he's our main director on Discovery. And again, different animation styles, totally different tones, aimed at kids, I would say, more than adults, those 2. That's exciting to me. That's what I want from short treks. Like, I want experimental stories. I want the freaking Animatrix, but in Star Trek. I want, horror. I want comedy. I want different things with different directors, and I really hope they flesh that out. Like, I have for so long wanted a solid anthology Star Trek series where every episode, and I understand it's hard to do because, damn it, sets are expensive to build. But I have really wanted an anthology series of Star Trek for so long, and I'm excited about this.
Me too, man. Me too.
The Section 31 show, he says they are breaking the story right now, and the plan is to shoot pretty much the second they're done with Discovery Season 3. And he also says that he would be remiss in saying that you're going to see Spock again on Discovery because we've obviously jumped so far into the future that it wouldn't make any sense. But the idea of bringing Ethan, Anson, and Rebecca back, and the Enterprise, he says, we loved it so much that to find a way to do that is definitely something we're thinking about a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, I am on board.
I think the fan outcry for that has been pretty strong. Honestly. And,
yeah, for sure. You're hearing it right now. I want it. I want it.
I will take it. I don't necessarily want it, but I will take it. Over on the animated Trek, he was talking about, let's see, which one was he talking about here? Oh, he was saying that some people we might know, some of the previous Trek casts might come and lend their voices to the animated shows, but it's mostly new characters. He does say that both of the upcoming animated shows are a love letter to Star Trek. They're targeted at very different groups, though. He says Mike McMahon's show, that's Lower Decks, he says it's really for kids from 11 to 70. Which just says to me it's for everybody. And, we had initially heard that it was going to be more adult centered. And, I don't think that's going to be the case, really. I think it's just going to be, more in line with what you were talking about wanting. Now, the animation factor might be a problem because I know a lot of people see animation and they're like, oh, it's a cartoon. I don't want to watch that. So that might be a problem, but, hopefully it's not. Hopefully enough people are like, open-minded to it, because I think there's a lot of great animation out there that is worthy of being seen. And he also says, what I love so much about the way Mike is doing is planning things. What would typically be the A story on any Star Trek episode is happening in the background. Like huge, crazy shit is going on in the background, and that's super peripheral to the story that you're actually focusing on. No show has ever really done that before. Except for that one episode of Buffy.
That is interesting. Huge stuff going on. I wonder what that means.
I don't know.
I really wonder with Lower Decks, like how much they will focus. Do we know, is it on TNG timeline? Like what's the timeline? Do we know anything yet?
I don't think they've actually said, but, I do, like, we've got a couple of hints. One, Mike McMahon has done, he's a big TNG fan, and he did a book that was a parody of TNG. But when he was talking about doing the show, he was talking about how he wanted to focus on, the people who were messing with those little yellow,
cartridges, which is
totally original series. So I don't know. I really don't know. Like,
right.
That could go either way. I suspect he's got to go TNG way. Especially if we're talking about having people that we know come in and do voices from time to time.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's just more modern. More people remember that show that are currently in the world. Is it going to be on the Enterprise? That's like really, is it going to be like literally on the bottom of the Enterprise? That's what I'm wondering.
I'd be okay with it, honestly. Like, bring in Brent Spiner to do the voice of Data for some time,
man.
Or like, sort of like what they did with, say what you will about the finale for Enterprise, but, the fact that they had like voiceovers from that episode, the Pegasus, popping in and doing, having Data and the intercoms and stuff, that's all really cool to me. I like that kind of stuff, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, the Nickelodeon show is happening, by the way. And, Kurtzman did give an update. He says, I won't announce the name of the Nickelodeon show, but that's a really different show from Lower Decks. That's a show that's for kids, younger, full CG animation. It's going to be incredibly cinematic. We just started seeing storyboards this week. It looks like wow. It's on par with Love, Death, and Robots in terms of beauty and lighting and cinema. So it's a really different feel, and Nickelodeon has been wildly supportive, and I think very excited to bring a new energy to TV, in animation. I am really excited about that too, because I am a child in my brain, and I could really get into a kid's Star Trek show, I think. I'm down. I want it all. Give it all to me. Including this, Quentin Tarantino gave a little update about his Star Trek film. Apparently it is still kind of happening. He says there's a script that exists for it now. I need to weigh in on it, but haven't been able to do that yet. He also says, oh yeah, it's an R-rated movie. If I do it, it'll be R-rated.
As we all assumed.
As we all assumed. Now, we did hear about Chris Hemsworth and Chris Pine walking away due to salary issues, negotiation issues, but Chris Hemsworth is saying now he turned down the next Star Trek movie because he wasn't sold on it. He says, I didn't feel like we landed on a reason to revisit that yet. I didn't want to be underwhelmed by what I was going to bring to the table.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. It's always, with those kind of negotiations, you never know. People are always going to say things that save face, make it seem like they made an artistic decision, even if it is just like, pay me more money.
Right.
Like, which is fair. You try to get yours. It's part of the game.
I don't want to, not present Chris Hemsworth's side of the story, especially since I quite like Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, me too.
Like to at least imagine that he's an honest sort of bloke.
Right. I think you're doing the right thing to bring it up. I also feel like I'm doing the right thing to play the pessimistic view. Pessimist nihilist over here.
Absolutely.
Just, that's probably doesn't matter. Whatever he said isn't true.
I'm like, hey man, Chris Hemsworth says it's for artistic reasons. That's pretty cool.
Trust no one.
You're like, we are nihilist, Lebowski. We believe in nothing. We cut off your Johnson.
Trust no one, man. Trust no one.
All right, so I do want to let you guys know that the What We Left Behind Deep Space Nine documentary, they are pre-selling it on Shout Factory, and if you buy it on Shout Factory, you can get the special edition. And look, the normal Blu-ray has an intro from Ira Steven Behr. It has a brief history of Deep Space Nine featurette, what we left out, deleted scenes. There are over a dozen deleted scenes, by the way.
Wow.
But behind the scenes at the Variety photo shoot featurette, an HD remaster discussion with the filmmakers. If you were at the theater, you saw a good portion of that. Post credits. More from the fans featurette, which just sounds like more interview footage from the fans that were in the movie and the theatrical trailer. Now, the special features for the normal Blu-ray are 90 minutes long. If you go to Shout Factory, to their website, and you order the special edition, and you're gonna have to hurry because it is, and they're not sponsoring this, by the way, it just excited me, and I went ahead and pre-ordered, canceled my pre-order from Amazon and did this instead. There is a limited, only to 1,500 copies, a limited 2-disc Blu-ray set, and it has like a musical reunion with composers Dennis McCarthy and Kevin Kiner, a roundtable look at the making of the documentary, and a 50-minute discussion with co-director and Star Trek Deep Space Nine showrunner Ira Steven Behr, co-director David Zappone, producer Kai DeMello Folsom, producer-editor Joseph Kornbrot, and producer-editor Luke Snellem. So that's like a ton of extra content.
Yeah.
And again, only 1,500 copies. So like all of that is stuff that I'd be interested in seeing. So I jumped on that.
Sweet.
Thought I'd let you guys know. And over at TrekCore.com, fantastic site. They've got fantastic screen caps. I love TrekCore. They have so much production, so many old production materials, like, and promo materials and stuff. Pictures of screen tests and stuff. It's a really cool site. But they're doing a little giveaway because this year is the 10th anniversary of the Kelvinverse timeline movies. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
10 years.
It's real crazy.
Anyway, so those movies, they're going to be released on a new Kelvin Timeline set. It's the whole trilogy on Blu-ray, and you can win that. I already own them all on Blu-ray and 2 of them on DVD. I still entered to win this thing. This one has a cool little fold-out poster that shows you the timeline, and you just go over to TrekCore. I'm going to have a link, by the way, to the Shout Factory for the DS9 Blu-ray, and I will have a link to TrekCore so you can enter this giveaway for the Kelvin Timeline trilogy on Blu-ray. I think it's really cool. It doesn't have any new on-disc features, but it's pretty packaging. And if you don't already have it, it's probably a pretty good idea. Or if you're like me, you're sick and you need help, but you might still want to enter to win.
Yeah, man. Gotta get that. Gotta get it.
Yeah, I know. By the way, I do want to let you guys know, I still have a ton of those posters from the, What We Left Behind, looking back at Deep Space Nine, documentary. If you guys hit me up, DM me, Star Trek Ucast over on Twitter, StarTrekUcast@gmail.com. Seriously, hit me up. I'll ship you out some posters. I still need to give you yours too.
Yeah, man. I want one.
All right. That's all I've got.
That's all you got?
That's all I've got.
That was a very informative news portion, my friend. Thank you for bringing it all.
Why does that sound like an insult when you say it?
I was
very informative.
I was thanking you for doing the research and making this happen, because you know me, I didn't even hear half that news till you said it on the cast. So that I'm just sitting here learning.
And every word you say sounds sarcastic.
I'm not being sarcastic. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us. It really is good to get back to the Star Trek Universe podcast. We love doing this show. And I think we're planning to do a ranking of the movies. So here's we're planning to do a ranking of the movies real soon. Problem is, a lot of the movies I don't remember that well. So we're going to do a ranking of the movies before we talked about watching them first all over again, but that's going to take a while to do all those casts. So we decided to do a ranking of the movies as best we remember them. And Dave will do a great job. Probably have a similar list. My list will probably change drastically. Who knows? I mean, obviously I have most of my feelings about the Star Trek movies are very just feelings. Like I don't remember all the scenes of every movie, so it's going to be interesting. So
if someone just starts quoting, I could probably pick up from the first line and go for about 20 minutes before I screw up.
Yeah. Dave
just quoting dialogue back and forth.
Dave's a freak.
The movies I specifically watched, I watched them more than anything.
Right. Absolutely.
Especially the first 6 movies.
I think I watched them with you, especially the first 6 movies. I watched with you more than I watched them any other way. So the fact that you've seen them almost every time I've seen them while I was seeing them, plus all the other times you've seen them. So yeah, Dave's gonna know more about this. We should do a Star Trek trivia, break out a Star Trek trivia game and play it on the air and just prove how dumb I am.
I have a book called I think it's called Obsessed with Star Trek, and that's a trivia thing.
Yeah, I've got a Star Trek trivia, a trivia game. It's just like a shuttlecraft with trivia cards inside.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then I also have another Star Trek trivia game that just has a ton of questions. And I have found I am not very good at any of those.
I think it'd be fun. We should get a co-host on here sometime and just do a Star Trek trivia round. Cause I think the listeners would have fun, besting us.
Possibly.
You know what we should do? We should get a set of those cards out, and at the end of each show, ask a trivia question, and the first person to write in, I don't know, get some props or something. I don't know. Just ask a Star Trek trivia question at the end of this thing and see who writes in first with an answer. It'd be fun.
I don't know.
I don't know if we have any prize to give, but gets a shout out or something.
But you know what? There's a fantastic podcast out there, and it used to be done by my friend Sean Ray over on the Cosmic Potato Podcast. It was called The Prime Direction, and I was on episode 5 or 6, and they didn't do it then. But the show has recently restarted with a little reboot, but it's all in the same feed still.
Same canon?
Yeah, it's the same feed, same canon, I guess. But,
being that it's in the normal world.
Yeah.
I just don't like canon problems is all I'm checking about. I don't want there to be some weird canon problems.
My friend Scott Madison took over the show, and he brought an element to the show that I've really enjoyed, where they each come up with 5 or a number of quiz questions, and they quiz each other in the middle and the end. And it's a really fun show, Prime Direction, and they're just talking to Star Trek fans about, how they got into Star Trek, what kind of memorabilia and stuff they have, and what it means to them, and whether or not they're still big. It's really interesting because there are so many different types of Star Trek fans, and I didn't mean for this to be a plug, but it totally is a plug at this point. But absolutely go check Prime Direction out. It is a solid show, and let Scott know that he's doing a bang up job over there.
Yeah. Cool. I will check it out
over here. It's a good show.
Prime Direction. I dig it.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we love you. Thanks for listening to the show. We'll be back real soon with our breakdown of the movies, and peace.
Live long and prosper.
To reach out to us, hit us up at StarTrekUcast.com, at Star Trek Ucast on Twitter, or search for the Star Trek Universe Podcast on Instagram or Facebook. And if you want to hear more from David C. Robertson, search for the DC On Screen podcast in your podcast app now, or go to maladjusted.tv for his comedy sketches. If you want to hear more from me, Matthew Carroll, search for the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast or the Orville Universe podcast in your podcast app, or check out my music. Just search for Matthew Carroll wherever you listen to music.